Welcome, dear viewers, to A1 Storyteller, where tales of courage, justice, and the human spirit come to life. Tonight, we bring you a story that will shake you to your core, a story of prejudice, power, and the unyielding fight for justice. Buckle up, for this is not just a story, this is a journey. This is The Road to Justice. The book opens and the pages flip rapidly, revealing glimpses of a highway, a black family in a car, flashing police lights, and a man in a suit holding a CIA badge. The screen fades to black, and the story begins. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the endless stretch of highway. David Carter adjusted the rearview mirror, his eyes briefly meeting those of his wife Lisa, who sat in the passenger seat. Her soft smile was a reminder of why he did what he did, why he balanced the dangers of his job with the love of his family. In the back seat, their two children, 10-year-old Marcus and 8-year-old Naomi, were engrossed in a game of I Spy, their laughter filling the car. It was supposed to be a peaceful road trip, a rare opportunity for the Carter family to escape the chaos of their daily lives. David had promised Lisa they'd leave his work behind, but as a CIA operative, he knew better than to make promises he couldn't keep. Still, for now, he allowed himself to relax, the rhythmic hum of the tires on asphalt lulling him into a rare moment of calm. But peace, as David knew all too well, was often fleeting. The flashing lights appeared out of nowhere, piercing through the twilight like an unwelcome intruder. David's grip tightened on the steering wheel as he glanced at the speedometer. He wasn't speeding, he hadn't broken any traffic laws, so why were they being pulled over? David? Lisa's voice was tinged with unease. It's okay, he said, though the tension in his voice betrayed his words. He pulled over to the side of the road, the gravel crunching beneath the tires. Two officers approached the car, their silhouettes ominous against the backdrop of the setting sun. The first officer, a burly man with a stern expression, tapped on David's window. "License and registration," he barked, his tone leaving no room for pleasantries. David handed over the documents, his mind racing. He knew the drill. He'd been trained to handle situations like this, but the presence of his family made everything different. He couldn't afford to make a mistake. The officer studied the documents, his eyes narrowing. "Step out of the car, sir." "Is there a problem, officer?" David asked, his voice calm but firm. "Just step out of the car," the officer repeated, his hand resting on the holster of his gun. David exchanged a glance with Lisa, who nodded almost imperceptibly. He opened the door and stepped out, his hands raised slightly to show he meant no harm. What followed was a nightmare. The officers ordered Lisa and the children out of the car, their voices harsh and accusatory. Marcus clung to his mother, his eyes wide with fear, while Naomi began to cry. "Spread your legs," one of the officers commanded as he began to pat David down. The humiliation burned like a brand, but David remained silent, his training kicking in. He knew better than to escalate the situation. But when the officers began to search the car, tossing their belongings onto the side of the road, David's patience wore thin. "You have no right to do this," he said, his voice low but steady. The burly officer smirked. "We have every right. Now, unless you want to make this worse, I suggest you cooperate." It was then that David noticed the second officer's badge number. He committed it to memory, his mind already calculating his next move. As the officers continued their search, David made a decision. He reached into his pocket, pulling out his CIA badge. The metallic glint caught the light and the officers froze. "Well, the burly officer began, but David cut him off. "Special Agent David Carter, CIA," he said, his voice like steel. "You've just made a very big mistake." The officers exchanged uneasy glances, their bravado crumbling. David took a step forward, his presence commanding. "You've harassed my family, violated our rights, and abused your power. This ends now." What followed was a whirlwind of events. David contacted his superiors, and within hours the small-town police department was under investigation. The officers who had stopped the Carter family were suspended, their actions scrutinized by federal authorities. But for David, the fight was far from over. He used his position to shine a light on the systemic racism and abuse of power that had plagued the department for years. His story made national headlines, sparking a wave of protests and calls for reform. In the end, justice was served, but the scars remained. The Carter family's road trip had become a symbol of resilience, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, the truth could prevail. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, this is A1 Storyteller signing off. Stay brave, stay curious, and keep seeking the truth. The screen fades to black, leaving only the words, A1 Storyteller, glowing in the darkness before the video ends.